I spend more time talking about the first three love busters because, from my perspective, they have so much to do with not only hurting people in a marriage, but they have a lot to do with problem solving. I want to take away the possibility of a selfish demand. I want to take away the possibility of a disrespectful judgment. I want to take away the possibility of an angry outburst so that you can be left with the other alternative, which is the 4 guidelines for successful negotiation. You see, you cannot negotiate successfully if you're making any of these mistakes. If you're at all abusive and controlling, you can't get what you want in your marriage. And so I want to take away the errors so that you're left with nothing but the possibility of a successful approach. Now, it's true that you're going to be left in limbo if you don't use the guidelines for successful negotiation. If you get rid of demands and you get rid of disrespectful judgments, you get rid of angry outbursts, but you don't learn how to negotiate successfully, you're left with 0. You're not dealing with your problems at all. But I want you to be in that position so that you'll be forced to consider the other alternative. I want you to either not have the problem solved at all and you do nothing, or you have a win-win solution. I don't want you to be in the other 2 conditions where a husband gets what he wants and the wife doesn't, or the wife gets what she wants and the husband doesn't. I don't want either one of those possibilities. And demands, disrespect, and anger give you those outcomes. I don't want you to have those outcomes. I only want win-win solutions. So we're done with the first 3 love busters. Now there are 3 more. I won't be spending quite as much time on those 3, but all 3 are important. And so I want you to consider them in more detail when you get to the lessons on this particular topic in the follow-up courses. The first one we're going to be talking about is annoying habits, behavior repeated without much thought that bothers your spouse. Now, it's unintentional. It's unintentional, but why are we so annoying? Why are people annoying? Well, when we're being annoyed, we see the problem immediately. You know, that person is certainly annoying. But when we're annoying, we expect our spouses to get used to it. As a matter of fact, it's part of my identity to do what it is I'm doing. And if Joyce happens to find my behavior to be annoying, that's her problem. She needs to accept me the way I am. After all, I'm not intentionally trying to hurt her. It's just that I tend to do this and this and this and this. And she comes and tells me how annoying it is. And my reaction is, well, doesn't annoy me. Matter of fact, you could do it too, and I'd be fine with that. Something you need to get over. So it is important to understand that annoying behavior is only a problem to the one who's annoyed. And of course, all love busters are that way. All love busters are not a problem to the person committing the love buster, except, as I said before, it's not going to solve anything for you and it's going to get you into trouble. But at the same time, when you're doing it, you actually feel better. You feel better when you're making a demand. You feel better when you're being disrespectful. You're feeling better when you have an angry outburst. I mean, that's why people do it. And when you're doing something that's annoying, you feel fine. It's your spouse who's having to put up with all this. Love units can be withdrawn whether or not it's intentional. Annoying habits can drain a love bank because they're unrelenting. Every time Joyce looks at me and watches me, what should we say? Put my hands in my pockets. Joyce is annoyed by my putting my hands in my pockets. I look around and I say, Joyce, look at the thousands of men who are putting their hands in their pockets. Everyone we see, is they've all got their hands in their pockets. And Joyce says, they are all annoying to me. Every last one of them. And if you don't want to be annoying, you are going to learn not to put your hands in your pockets. You can understand that if Joyce finds that annoying, it is not a philosophical problem. I mean, she would be the last to say that it's wrong to put your hands in your pockets. She would say, it simply annoys me. And I don't know why. But I can't get over it. And she's right. Since we can change any of our habits, we can eliminate annoying habits. As again, What if folding your arms left over right annoys your spouse, but folding your arms right over left doesn't annoy your spouse? Would it be worth changing the way you fold your arms? Yes. Is it wrong for you to fold your arms one way or the other? No. It's not wrong for me to put my hands in my pockets. It's not wrong. I am not committing some sin. God thinks it's just fine. Unless maybe God has sent Joyce to tell me that he's annoyed by it too. But the basic idea is that annoying habits are idiosyncratic. There are a whole host of people out there that wouldn't find my behavior annoying. Or there's a whole host of people out there that would find things that I do annoying that Joyce doesn't mind at all. So when we're trying to get ourselves pulled together as a couple, we have to just identify, what do you do that seems to bother me? And without having to give justification for it, we should go to work to try to eliminate the things that we do that our spouse finds annoying. Once they're learned, pleasing habits are just as easy to do as annoying habits. Well, how do you do that? How do you overcome annoying habits? First of all, you identify each other's annoying habits. You have to make a list. And I will say this, that annoying habits tend to be identified by women. Men find women to be a little annoying in some circumstances, especially when they point out their annoying habits, their husband's annoying habits. But generally, men can tolerate all sorts of things that women can't tolerate. And it's because of the way the brain is made. Women have connections in their brain to everything. If you look at the connection between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, a woman's corpus callosum, which is the fibers that are connecting the two hemispheres, is very thick compared to a man's brain. For that reason, a woman is aware of her surroundings. She knows what's going on. She sees me when I'm putting my hands in my pockets. I don't see anybody else. I'm looking at something over here, and everything else is a blur. Joyce sees everything. This is why women get into home decorating, because women know what a room looks like. I can go into a room and not tell you a thing about it after I leave. Most women can go into a room and tell you where every piece of furniture was and what color it was and how it was set and what was wrong with it. The basic idea is that women are very different than men, and as a result, one of the things that they're different about is that they will find more things to be annoying because they're aware of more things. So when you get your lists of annoying habits from each other, which is one of the assignments, a woman's list will generally be much longer than a man's list. I had one lady make a list that was 24 single-spaced pages. And they were all, each line was different. And her husband had nothing. He turned in a blank sheet of paper. Now, the question is, what do you do with something like that? And the answer is, what you do is you work on these annoying habits in terms of their priority. First of all, you have to eliminate the easy ones. If your spouse gives you a list, and it's generally going to be the wife giving the husband a list, eliminate the easy ones first. You know, he looks through the list and he says, well, I think I can do that. I think I can do that. I can do that. And, you know, and she says, well, I'll tell you what, give me the right to put it back on the list if it turns out you don't do it. Sure thing. So basically, there might be some things on the list that you basically have learned just new. You haven't, it's not developed into a strong habit. And I know I can do that. Now, I got to tell you that putting my hands in my pockets would not be one of those that I could say, sure, I can do that, because I do that just so instinctively. So it's something that has to be worked at if I want to get over that particular annoying habit. So the question is, well, how do you work at it? Well, you select 3 of the most annoying remaining habits to overcome. So Joyce gives me a list. And she says, here are 3 things that are annoying me the most, that you seem to do the most often. And every time you do it, it always bothers me. And if you could get rid of these 3, I would feel a whole lot better about you. And so, okay, I take 3. I don't take the 24 single-spaced pages. I take 3. And I have to develop a strategy for eliminating the habit. It has to be something that I will actually consciously and deliberately work on. So I create a plan. I create a plan to overcome each habit. And you'll notice that in the lessons on annoying habits, I talk about examples of plans, so that you can actually um, think in the same way. Some of the plan can be to create a different environment. If something I'm doing is annoying because of a certain room configuration, I can change the room configuration, and then that whatever that turns out to be isn't so annoying. Like, for example, if she doesn't like the way I sit in a particular chair, we can get rid of the chair. We can find another chair where I'm not going to sit that way as likely. Measure your progress until it's eliminated. In other words, make sure that you are noticing whether you're doing this each day. And I have to tell you that you might say to yourself, well, that is an awful lot of trouble to go to. But it only is a lot of trouble if you're the guy doing the annoying habit. For the person that is the recipient of your effort, they are eternally grateful that you would stop being so annoying. And just to be working on the project is very encouraging. And then you overcome the next three from the list after you've overcome the first three. Now, I have to tell you that this is one of the toughest lessons that we have. And I'll tell you why. It really creates very, very bad feelings. If your relationship is really on the rocky edge right now and you are just barely making it, I suggest that you not make a list of annoying behaviors just yet. Because as a matter of priorities, I got to tell you that annoying habits are not the least of my worries, but it is not as big a deal as some of these other things that we've been talking about. So if you have a terrible time making decisions, if you have a terrible time with angry outbursts, if you have a terrible time with disrespect, I would just leave the list of annoying habits to a later date. Because right now, if you're just not happy with the other guy, and then the next thing you know, you've got this list of things, then you're ready to just throw up the pages and say, I'm out of here. I don't want to do any more of this. And so, word to the wise, rate your relationship. Look at your spouse and say, can you handle a list of annoying habits? If your spouse says, maybe we better work on some other things first, forego the list. Okay? Independent behavior is another very important love buster. Now, independent behavior is something we actually talked about last night, because it's plans and activities that you conceive and execute as if your spouse did not exist. It is what you do when you're violating the policy of joint agreement. You're going ahead and making your plans. You're not even discussing it with your spouse. Your spouse is not in on the discussion of lifestyle decisions. Why is independent behavior tolerated? Well, our giver wants our spouse to enjoy life. Let him do whatever makes him happy. So our giver says, if he wants to go out with his friends tonight, wants you to be home with the kids, and he comes home drunk, look, he works hard. He is somebody who deserves to have some fun once in a while. For crying out loud, don't prevent him from having a good time. And when he comes home drunk, just kind of ignore it and tuck him in and make sure that he gets to work in the morning. That's the giver. The giver's not thinking about you at all. So the giver is going to encourage independent behavior. Our taker wants us to enjoy life. Why should we let our spouse keep us from having a good time? So from the taker's perspective, a spouse should be able to do whatever he or she wants. This is why there is so much literature out there, so many books out there on how spouses should let each other do whatever they please. These books appeal to the giver and the taker. A book that says, no, all decisions should be made jointly doesn't appeal to either one of these groups, and as a result, doesn't sell very well. It's unappealing. You read a book about how all of your decisions should be made jointly, and as you read it, the giver says, don't you dare buy that book because you're not being unconditional in your love. And the taker says, don't you dare buy that book because you're not going to do anything that you want to do to make you happy. So the book goes back on the shelf again. You don't take it home. The whole idea of the policy of joint agreement is unintuitive. It's something that our personalities do not find appealing. The giver and the taker both reject the idea that we should be anything but independent. Neither a giver or taker encourages us to be interdependent. Interdependent. To consider the feelings of both spouses simultaneously. The giver and taker both think that's a bad idea. The policy of joint agreement creates interdependence. If you follow this policy where you make all your decisions together and you expect enthusiastic agreement or you don't go forward, you will become interdependent. Never schedule or plan anything without first discussing it with each other and then agreeing to it enthusiastically. I use this analogy of a house, and there are rooms in your house. Each room represents the roles you play in life: career, leisure activities, religious practices, family, and marriage. Each of these roles represents a different room. I wrote an article on the Marriage Builder's website that describes this. It's called Why Women Leave Men. And it describes this house. And in this house, a man has the functions, the roles that he plays, and they're all nicely separated. Everything you do in each room affects each other, whether you think it should or not. He has his golf room, he has his work room, he has his garage, he has all of these things. And then he has his marriage room where his wife is invited to go in to make love. But she's not invited in any of the other rooms. She's not invited in the golf room. She's not invited in the career room. She's not invited in any of these rooms. They're off limits. They're off limits to the spouse's influence. Do you have any role in your life? Is there anything in your life where you say, I'm sorry, the policy of joint agreement does not apply in this area? We cannot make joint decisions in this area. If so, that's a room in your house where your spouse is off limits. And it's that room that's going to cause your spouse or your marriage all kinds of trouble. I'm going to go to the sixth love buster: dishonesty. Failure to reveal to your spouse correct information about your emotional reactions, personal history, daily activities, and plans for the future. Dishonesty is a terrible love buster. A terrible love buster. How do you feel when your spouse looks you right in the eye and lies to you? Terrible. Terrible. You're going to remember this for years to come. Every lie that your spouse has ever said, you probably can remember. And if your spouse is a habitual liar, if your spouse does a lot of lying, there is a ton of love units that is lost every time. And it can be something that is insignificant. But to you it's significant because it's a lie, because it's dishonest. So dishonesty is a love buster. It withdraws love units by the carload. Dishonesty's three consequences. Feelings are hurt when dishonesty is discovered. I mean, you're going to be upset. But you also have the problem of misinformation that causes adjustment problems. You're not going to be able to adjust to the right target. You ask your spouse how he or she feels about something, and you get the wrong information, and so you're going to make adjustments that are incorrect because the information is incorrect. And the third consequence is that an important emotional need is not being met, something we'll be talking about this afternoon. Honesty and openness. Honesty and openness is an emotional need. We absolutely have to have it in marriage in order to feel fulfilled. And if our spouse is lying to us about the most insignificant issues, we now have a dishonest spouse, somebody that isn't meeting this important emotional need. So there are three consequences to dishonesty. One of them is that it's a love buster. Dishonesty is a common solution to problems that independent behavior creates. In other words, if I want to make decisions without having to consider my wife Joyce's feelings, sometimes the solution to the problem is for me to go ahead and do what I'm doing without telling her. Or if she asks me about it, to lie about it. What my spouse doesn't know won't hurt him or her. Now, dishonesty creates what I call a secret second life. A secret second life. It's a life that I am living parallel to the life that Joyce and I live, only she doesn't know anything about it. It's secret. It's private. I'm not letting her know because I don't want her to be upset about something I'm doing that I know is not in her best interest. It greatly influences the risk of infidelity. If I have a secret second life, chances are there's going to be somebody of the opposite sex that joins me in that secret second life, and I'm going to be unfaithful to Joyce. It is next to impossible for me to have an affair if I don't have a secret second life. If Joyce is aware of everything I'm doing, if I am transparent to Joyce, and I'm following the policy of joint agreement, I can't have an affair. I can't. It's simply impossible. But I can if I have a secret second life that she didn't know anything about. Honesty helps protect your spouse from your potentially harmful habits. In other words, the vices that you might be developing. You would develop in your secret second life. If you're honest, chances are you won't be developing those vices. Harmful habits of the past should be guarded against in the present. Have you ever had problems with something in the past? Honesty will help you prevent it in the future by telling your wife, watch out for this, because this is what I'm capable of doing. Harmful habits of the present should be exposed and overcome. Instead of having a secret second life where I'm doing something that I know Joyce would be opposed to, I'm going to be honest about everything, and that way it exposes the problem and I'm able to overcome it. And harmful habits of the future can be nipped in the bud. I can tell Joyce, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about it? She says, are you nuts? Well, that'd be disrespectful. She would say, I wouldn't be enthusiastic about that. And then that ends that possibility. Well, now we have a basic concept that goes with dishonesty. It's called the policy of radical honesty. Reveal to your spouse as much information as you can, as you know, your thoughts, your feelings, your habits, your likes, your dislikes, personal history, daily activities, and plans for the future. I am an advocate of what I call transparency. I want you to know everything about each other, everything that there is. And the policy of radical honesty is a rule that will guide you toward that outcome. Reveal to your spouse as much information about yourself as you know. Your thoughts, as long as they're not disrespectful. Your feelings, your habits, your likes, your dislikes, personal history, daily activities, plans for the future, everything. Tell each other everything. For the reasons that I just stated. It helps guide you toward a blending of each other's lives with each other. It helps the two of you become one. You come to understand each other, and by understanding each other, you're able to come up with solutions to problems that take each other into account simultaneously.